Hello. Hi, everyone. This is Victoria from Project Dialogue. Welcome to our forum that is censored. It's going to be about freedom of expression as experienced by media practitioners, which we have here on our panel. Mr. Premesh Chandran from Malaysia Kini, Mr. Sri from Undi 18, and Muzimai Rahman, who is a writer and filmmaker. One interesting thing I want to just put out first before we go further into the forum. When we were trying to promote this event, we had so many obstacles, mainly because Facebook and Instagram was preventing us from advertising this forum. And the reason was that we had too much social issues / political content. So we had to completely re-edit everything and then try again. And then the review process took a while, and then only it went, the advertising was approved. So that whole thing lost us so much time. But that's very interesting to note too, and pretty ironic because it's a forum about censorship and Facebook and Instagram is preventing us from advertising this. That's something that we might want to think about in the future, engaging with social media platforms directly on a forum and asking them, what the hell's going on? Also, I think we have some regional friends joining us, friends from Indonesia and Philippines. Thank you for joining us today. And if you're out there, feel free to join and participate later during the Q&A. And I understand that in Philippines and Indonesia, the media landscape there is very different. And in some cases, there have been journalists having disappeared and things like that. And there are different forms of oppression and censorship there as well. And before we jump to our forum, I just want to do a bit of housekeeping, just to explain to everyone how Crowdcast works. So for the audience, if you look down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see polls. You can answer the polls, feel free. And you can also ask a question. So you can ask a question at any point during the forum, and the panel will address it later during the Q&A session. And you can also upvote questions that you think that you want the panelists to answer right now or answer first. That can also work. So it has that Reddit-like feature. And now I will have the panel introduce themselves. So maybe we can start with Pramesh.
Hi, everybody. I'm Premesh, Prem from Malaysia Kini. I've been around here for a while, doing media stuff. And thanks a lot for the invitation. Looking forward to having a chat.
Great. Kira, do you want to quickly?
Hi, my name is Kira. I am the co-founder of Undi 18. I also lead the education work that we do here, specifically civic engagement, voter education. We recently organized Parliament Digital, which is probably a reason why I was invited to this forum. We can go into it a little bit more later. Yeah.
Okay, and last but not least, Muzamir.
Hello, hi, my name is Mus. I'm a full-time filmmaker, writer, and also curator for a few of film festival. Pesta film kita, Tamasha Wayang Budiman, and also, freelancer.
Yes, thank you so much. And if you want to find out more about their work, I'll have them send me links and we can put it on our social medias or put it down here. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see some links appear about some of their work that you can follow. Now, let's jump into the forum. And my first question would be for Pramesh, because Malaysia Kini, I mean, with so much heat on Malaysia Kini now and what's happening with your colleague Stephen Gunn, that's a very unfortunate thing. How is the atmosphere in the newsroom like now? Like, are people afraid to come to work, or do you see a pattern of self-censorship beginning to take hold in the newsroom? Or are editors and upper management making decisions that take into consideration the safety of their staff, future of the company, etc.?
Well, Malaysia Kini has been around for 21 years, and we started Malaysia Kini with our eyes open. We knew it will not be an easy journey. We knew that the government would respond in a fairly tough way, and try to restrict our ability to publish independently. So we are kind of geared for that. So in fact, we do better under pressure than when there's no pressure at all. We kind of are tuned to having that pressure on us. So we have a lot of modus operandi of how to deal with such things. Obviously, the contempt of court case came all of a sudden, and it's already at the federal court very quickly. Normally, you start at the high court and you go your way up. But whenever these kind of things happen, people rally. Our audience rallies around us, subscribers rally around us. There's a lot of friends and allies all over the world. There were articles in the New York Times, in the Guardian, all over the world. They pick it up. So there is a lot of pressure which actually builds up, and then it really puts a spotlight about the claims by the government that they support independent press. There's a lot of scrutiny, not just on Malaysia Kini, but on the government in terms of their policies, and puts them also on the back foot. So that also helps. So I think that we're kind of used to it, and our message to our staff, our editors is that keep doing your job, be professional, be balanced, be independent. This fight, we're not against the government or fighting against one party. Our job is it is good journalism versus bad journalism, and we want to be always on the side of good journalism. It's not about Malaysia Kini versus the government or any of Malaysia Kini versus other media. No, it is Malaysia Kini against bad journalism, right? So we keep that in mind. How do we always do our best and do it professionally, and not allow things like self-censorship, setting in? So we do push ourselves hard. We always ask ourselves, are we doing the best job possible as independent professional journalists? And sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But whenever we're not getting it so right, we always try to work hard and do it better. So that's really the frame of mind in the newsroom, day in, day out.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. That's indeed a very daunting task to take on. This responsibility on your shoulders to tell the public the truth, to always stay true to the facts, but also worry about your safety also from time to time, which is very understandable. Now on to Kira. You mentioned Parliament Digital briefly just now, which is also why we invited you on as well. Could you walk us through how Parliament Digital works, what kinds of goals it aims to achieve, and how that itself could attract unwanted attention? Because that's something I still don't understand. Like, I don't understand why you had the unwanted attention. That's what I meant. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I muted myself. Okay, so Parliament Digital was set up to prove that a parliamentary sitting was possible, because as we all know, there was basically a sitting, which was only the Agong speech. And I think as young people, we felt like, it's not impossible to get 200 people on the call to discuss issues, right? There are so many ways to move forward digitally now. So many governments have established their own digital parliament. So I think as young people, we were just like, let's try to prove them wrong and let's do it ourselves. So the main goal is, one, to prove that a digital sitting is possible. Two, to give a voice for young Malaysians to speak up on a national platform. And we put special attention into making sure that the participants are inclusive, they're diverse, they come from various communities. We had participants who are Orang Asli participants, we had 30% female representation, we had participants as young as 15 years old, only Form 3 in high school, talking about national issues. So we did not expect it would get so much attention. In fact, we were people 24 hours. We got almost 2,000 registrations of interest, either as observer or applying to be a wakil rakyat themselves. So I think a few days leading up to the event. So when we announced the participants' names, we wanted to make it like a huge fanfare. So we put their names and their kawasan on social media. I think the bigger the event became, the more attention it garnered, especially when the participants were meeting different MPs and others on both sides, by the way. They even met ministers, they met opposition MPs, but they also met ministers, right? They met Nancy Shukri, they met YB Tokpa, all these high-ranking ministers. But I think it attracted, it was big enough that special branch or the police also wanted to take note or gather intel on these participants. But the way they did it was rather odd, in my opinion. I mean, I've never been approached this way, but we had participants who were approached through Instagram or through Facebook or through WhatsApp or like my dad's friend called me and said I should go to the police station. So this kind of reaching out, we felt was not appropriate. And for many of the participants, it's their first time ever being in the political scene. And they're not even political party members, right? So it's the first time ever they were being thrown into this limelight. And I think on our end as the organizer, we did not have the hindsight to sort of prepare for these kind of consequences or repercussions to the event that we are organizing. But lucky for us, we're working with really a group of activists like Liga Rakyat Democratic who are very experienced in dealing with this sort of situations. So we could immediately provide legal assistance to our participants who had to go to the police stations. And of course, our supporters and funders were also very supportive in helping us craft statements, helping us prepare, and working with us to making sure that participants are also okay. So on the first day, we released a statement calling out the harassment. And I think a reporter actually went to ask IGP to say that you sent police after participants, and he was like, no, we didn't. So I was like, okay. So I think it was quite concerning because then people were asking us we were liars. But I think what happened was that after the statement came out, after reporters published IGP statements, some of the participants were actually ghosted by the police. So I think in a way that's like good for them. I think the IGP publicly saying that we are not targeting any participants was useful. But one thing that came out from the whole discourse on our participants being approached is that some people, even the UMNO supporters, were saying like, oh, it's very common for the police to reach out to you, for the special branch to reach out to you because you are in politics, right? This is political advocacy. This is what it's about. But at the end of the day, you don't see police reaching out to every single student who participates in a policy making competition. You don't see the police reaching out to anyone that participates in a Kerana fellow, for example, right? So it doesn't make sense that our event in particular were being targeted and targeted in such in a way it's rather inappropriate and quite odd. So I think we were quite curious, but of course we didn't get any answers from it. It's just after the event everything sort of calmed down and nobody really got contacted anymore. But just oddly enough, none of the organizers themselves were contacted. Maybe they already know us, I don't know. But none of us were contacted, and we felt that was also quite we felt it could be better. If you wanted more information about the event, I think contacting the secretariat would be a faster way to get information compared to reaching out to the participants who were very confused for most of it.
Yeah, that's very, very weird. One, the way that the manner that they reached out to them through their social medias and then not reaching out to the organizers, this too is really odd. But also I don't agree that when politics is involved, so should the police. I don't think the police should be involved in politics.
Normalized. It shouldn't be normalized. It shouldn't be okay that you need to be very careful on what you say and what you do just because you care about national issues. I think this is one of the barriers for young people to participate in politics, because we had participants who were on scholarships, who were bonded with their employers or bonded with their scholarship funders, and they were risking their their education just to speak up on issues, and that's not right, lah. Yeah,
definitely. Now on to more bad news, maybe. Muz, for the film world, saya nak tanya, filem jenis mana yang selalu kena ditapis ataupun dilarang, dan apakah pengimbangan ataupun rasional di sebalik penapisan itu? Dan sebagai seorang pembikin filem, wajar tak filem itu ditapis ataupun dilarang?
Okey, pertama sekali kita kena sedar yang tentang penapisan filem dan pengharaman tayangan filem. Kita boleh anggap dua benda tu perkara yang berbeza lah. Yang pertama, ada filem-filem yang diharamkan atas sebab-sebab tertentu. Antara sebab-sebabnya adalah mungkin mengganggu-gugat keselamatan negara, mungkin ada unsur-unsur yang tidak sesuai dengan budaya tempatan. Biasanya filem-filem yang diharamkan ni diharamkan tayangan secara keseluruhan. Kita ambil contoh, ada beberapa filem, kalau filem Malaysia pernah dilarang tayang, antara yang awal yang saya ingat adalah filem Amir Muhammad, Lelaki Komunis Terakhir, sebab tajuk dia agak politikal. Dan juga dan kemudian ada satu filem Aziz Syed Osman tahun 90-an dilarang tayang sebab ada unsur-unsur khurafat. Khurafat tu dalam bahasa Melayu tu unsur-unsur tahyul, unsur-unsur yang tak masuk akal dalam budaya tempatan. Dan keduanya
Tahyu maksudnya apa?
Melanggar prinsip-prinsip agama Islam lah. Contohnya menggambarkan kejahatan, menggambarkan syaitan secara visual, secara fizikal. Itu sebagai contoh. Yang keduanya adalah filem yang ditapis. Filem yang ditapis ni maknanya dia ditapis di babak-babak tertentu saja, tapi dia boleh ditayangkan. Itu ada banyak jugalah, terutama filem-filem daripada luar. Dan tapisan filem ni kita kena sedar dia ada pelbagai jenis juga. Pertama, dia akan ikut filem tu bahasa apa. Contoh filem pada luar, filem Hollywood, dia punya tapisan lebih longgar berbanding dengan filem Melayu. So filem Melayu tak boleh dua watak bercium. Tapi filem bukan Melayu boleh, tak ada masalah. Itu pun ada tapisan. Jadi saya secara peribadinya saya sebenarnya memang tak bersetuju langsung dengan penapisan filem ni, sebab bagi saya dari satu segi dia akan menyekat kreativiti pembikin filem tu sendiri.
Okey, bagaimana dengan filem barat tapi aktor-aktor tu Muslim, macam mana? Boleh bercium tak?
Pada pendapat saya tak pernah lagi tahu butir-butir lebih terperinci, tapi saya rasa kalau asalkan filem tu bukan berbahasa Melayu, dia punya keputusan, dia punya penapisan tu lebih longgar daripada bahasa Melayu. Dan itu sendiri kalau boleh cek di lembaga kalau nak tahu, penapisan filem ni ada di bawah jagaan lembaga penapisan filem. Dan lembaga penapisan filem ni pula berada di bawah Kementerian Dalam Negeri, KDN. So jadi apa saya tegas kat sini, ramai salah anggap ingat yang penapisan filem dibuat oleh FINAS, Badan Filem Nasional. Sebenarnya tak. Yang buat adalah KDN. Sebab tu anda nampak macam ada kecelaruan di situ. Dari satu pihak dia macam okey, dari satu pihak tak okey. Dan kalau kita ikut sejarah penapisan filem ni pula, dia panjang. Sejak tahun 1908 lagi, dia mula penapisan filem ni mula dikuasaikan atau dijaga oleh pihak polis sebenarnya. Pihak polis yang melakukan penapisan filem. Sehinggalah tahun 1960 akta itu berubah sikit demi sikit lah. Dan akta terbaru penapisan filem yang kita ada adalah pada tahun 2002. Ya. Dan pada saya itu masih rigid jugalah.
Okey, kenapa Muzamil berpendapat bahawa penapisan filem itu tak wajar?
Okey, sebab yang saya rasa aneh adalah selepas penapisan filem dilakukan, LPF juga telah menjalankan satu benda yang dipanggil klasifikasi, iaitu untuk tayangan umum, untuk 18 tahun ke atas, untuk PG-13 misalnya. Jadi benda tu jadi macam dah dua tapisan dilakukan. Filem pertama dah ditapis, dah dipotong adegan yang kata tu, kemudian diletak untuk 18 tahun ke atas pula. Jadi saya rasakan ada lebih wajar adalah untuk LPF sendiri hanya meletakkan klasifikasi saja. Filem ini hanya untuk penonton matang 18 tahun ke atas. So filem ini tidak ditapis. Kalau nak ditapis, tak payah letak klasifikasi. So dia jadi macam dua benda. Dia buat dua benda yang berlainan.
Okey.
Pendapat saya.
Faham? Okey. And Pramesh, what are the, similar to Moses' question, I was wondering what are some of the elements or topics that you come across in your line of work tends to be censored? Like which type of articles tend to be censored, for example?
Well, I wouldn't call it censorship. I think we are quite vigilant around issues which relates to religion and also relates to royalty, because I think these are two areas where it is easy to take offense or feel offended, and then maybe create a little bit of hurt, and that causes a lot of issues. I think professional journalism is not about insulting any particular group, race or community. It's about speaking up for the public, about public concerns, etc. So these are areas that are a little bit more delicate to handle, especially when it involves inter-religious issues, etc., where different communities are contesting their rights, in society. But I think in terms of corruption, in terms of holding government to power, holding those to the counter power. These are areas that the public are in full support. They want to see those in power held accountable. They want to see public officials build a better country, dedicate themselves to building a better country. So these are areas that you can really confront power and tell the stories. So I think it's a bit of a balance, but I wouldn't call it censorship per se.
Okay, no worries. Since Kira is still not up yet, we're working on trying to get her back on the screen. Her stream reloaded for a bit, so that's why she disconnected. I will direct my next question, which is actually a question for all the panelists. Again, to you, Pramesh. I just want to ask, have you in your line of work come up with some creative, maybe bizarre ways to bypass surveillance or censorship? Maybe in the work you produce, or maybe in the way you communicate with your colleagues. We don't have to give away the exact details because we also want to protect you, but if you could maybe explain to the audience, how is it that journalists in your line of work try to bypass surveillance?
With surveillance, you kind of assume, especially in a digital world, that there's some amount of surveillance always happening, right? So you can't really be totally out or ignore idea that somehow surveillance is happening. So it's really much more important to build a culture of transparency and accountability. To say, look, you know what? If you come and sit in Malaysia Kini, there's nothing that we are hiding. We do our job. So people often ask, who's behind Malaysia Kini, or we have a political interest. But you see in the newsroom, they're so open about things. It's very hard to hide any sort of political influence. So you can actually see what's happening. If you ask any Malaysia Kini staff over the last 21 years about our culture here, about how transparent and accountable we are, they will actually say something different. So I think that censorship, censorship is used by power and by authority in order to curtail freedom of expression. And we should not support that culture. We should not ask people to censor themselves or to control themselves. We should actually empower people to speak up, in a way that brings things to light, that empowers people who do not have a voice. So we try to combat the culture of censorship by strengthening ourselves and knowing that if there is powers coming down on us or trying to force us to be silent, there will be a strong forceful response from the organization, and we always build strength and resilience for us to have that strong response when push comes to shove. So I think that to deal with censorship is to have those parts of resilience and alternatives so that we don't have to censor ourselves.
Okay. I was wondering too, like if maybe this might apply more to activists, but I'm pretty sure journalists might use the same types of apps or something. But I know a lot of people go on, what are some of those very private chat apps called? It escapes me right now.
I know I've learned from the Filipino activists that they use Signal.
Yes, Signal, Telegram.
Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently journalists in China use certain types of emojis to communicate with each other. And that emoji alone would carry with it a lot of meaning, and that helps them bypass surveillance. That's just something journalists in China have tried. I don't know about here in Malaysia, but I know activists here, we use Signal and Telegram to evade surveillance. So sorry, Kira, just to recap quickly about the conversation that happened when you disconnected. Moose was just clarifying on censorship. He does not agree with censorship. He doesn't think films should be censored, but he did make a distinction between Western and Malaysian films, like kissing in Malay films not allowed, but kissing in Western films allowed. And then he says there's a lot of confusion around which governing body actually censors films, and it's actually not usually FINAS, it's actually KDN, Home Ministry.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, a lot of people would think it's FINAS.
Yeah.
An interesting thing to note. And Pramesh was just talking about alternatives to censorship or evading censorship.
Yeah, thanks for the catch up. So sorry that it dropped. Yeah.
No worries, it's okay. Now I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Pramesh. Have you, in your line of work, come up with creative ways to bypass surveillance as well? The work you produce, but maybe the way you communicate with your colleagues.
Yeah, of course, like, I'm rather new in this world, compared to both Muzamir and Pramesh. But I think in the advocacy work that we do, sometimes you have to pick your battles. I think this is a very common position that many activists are faced in. You have to pick your battles. What is a hill you want to die on? And most importantly, what kind of resources do you have to go into that battle? So for example, with Parliament Digital, like one example, right, is that we didn't prepare legal support. We didn't have lawyers on hand just in case anything happened. So we had to, unfortunately, take an initiative to maybe preemptively censor any controversial topic that a participant might want to say. So for example, we had to emphasize again and again, in your speech, you have to submit in advance. You have to let us take a look at it, because we don't want you to say something seditious. We don't want you to put yourself in a position where, the police will come knocking on your door, because we are not ready to face that. And you may not be ready for that as well. Issues like potentially seditious issues like maybe a monarchy, or issues about Islam, or issues about LGBT or migrant issues or refugee issues. I think these are beyond inciting or inviting unwanted attention from institutions or authority. There's also a potential where you might be doxxed online. I think this was the bigger fear that we had in managing an event like Parliament Digital, because we had so many minors and underage who were a part of it, right? So of course we got their parents' consent to broadcast the event, but there were certain participants who got extra attention from the public because it was live streamed. It was live streamed on multiple channels, multiple Facebook pages. So I think certain participants were zoomed in on and say like, oh, this person is like very liberal, very progressive, very like whatever lah. When you sakat masyarakat, whatever, and their pictures, their Twitter accounts were all were called out online, and they were being attacked for their opinions. So I was preparing for that to happen. So I was telling the participants that you have to be very careful, and of course, if something happens, we will support you and we will be behind you. But I don't want you to put yourself in a danger, or put yourself in a position where you are in danger, or put yourself in a position where you're not ready to face the consequences. So this was something that we had to make very clear, and I guess in a way it's preemptively self-censoring ourselves as well, because it's very challenging for us. For us, especially as first-time organizers working with children in a way. Actually, if you're under 18, right, how do you navigate these kind of situations at the same time giving them a platform for them to speak up authentically? I think that's the struggle when it comes to the work that we do at Undi 18. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. And Moose, I'm pretty sure also in the film industry or just in the art world, I've heard from artists too that they have found ways to create political discussions in their art without it being too overt. So, saya juga nak tanya, dalam filem ada tak cara untuk mengelakkan pengawasan dari perbadanan penguatkuasa? Ada tak contoh-contoh penggunaan simbolisme, dialog abstrak dan sebagainya?
Okay, untuk filem-filem di Malaysia sebenarnya kalau kita perhati dari sejarah filem memang banyak filem-filem yang mengkritik monarki, mengkritik kerajaan, mengkritik sosial politik, tapi lepas ditayangkan dengan pawagam kerana saya rasa pembikin filem yang bagus dia akan menghasilkan filem yang mengkritik sesuatu sistem tapi menghasilkan dengan penuh subtle, dengan penuh orang Melayu kata berlapis, penuh simbolisme. Memang ada beberapa filem yang saya mungkin contoh ni tak saya bagi beberapa contoh yang saya rasakan lah. Kalau kita ambil filem Yasmin Rahmat, filem Yasmin Rahmat sangat mengkritik tentang bagaimana satu Malaysia tu macam mana dibangunkan, dan mungkin juga mengkritik tentang romantisme terhadap kolonial, terhadap penjajah, masyarakatnya yang suka benda-benda English. Dan antara contoh yang terkuat yang saya boleh ambil adalah filem daripada Thailand. Sebab kita tahu Thailand monarkinya sangat kuat.
Ya.
Raja dia pun raja yang tak pernah senyum kan. So antara filem yang saya rasa sangat terkenal adalah Uncle Bumi Who Cannot Recall the Past. Filem tu direkturnya daripada Api Capong Widya Satupol. Filem tu telah memenangi filem terbaik di Cannes, tak silap saya tahun sekitar 2009. Filem tu sangat pelik, sangat aneh, dan sehingga saya rasa tak ada orang Thailand pun yang akan percaya filem tu sebenarnya mengkritik rajanya. Dan filem tu lepas dan sangat terkenal. Filem tu lah yang membuatkan sinema Thailand jadi perhatian di mata dunia. Dan untuk filem lokal sebenarnya kita ada beberapa yang satu dan juga ada beberapa yang sangat direct. Baru-baru ni kita ada sekitar waktu PKP bulan 4 ada filem Daulat ditayangkan di Netflix. Filem tu menunjukkan tentang politik di Malaysia yang sangat terang. Dan filem-filem sebegitu sebenarnya memang tak akan lepas untuk ditayangkan di panggung wayang ataupun di televisyen. Jadi sebagai pembikin selain ditapis oleh pihak kerajaan, kita sebenarnya ada banyak pilihan-pilihan lain untuk ditayangkan. Jadi pada saya seperti Kira cakap, we have to choose our battle lah. Kita harus pilih kita nak lawan yang mana. Jadi sebagai pembikin melawan penapisan filem tu bukanlah satu benda yang besar sebenarnya. Yang benda yang paling penting adalah berkarya dengan baik sendirilah. Itu pada pendapat saya. Contoh sebenarnya ada lebih banyak lagi tentang filem-filem yang cuba mengkritik sosial tapi masih lepas ditayangkan di panggung. Sebab kita kena ingat penapisan filem di under LPF ni dikawal oleh hanya beberapa orang. Dan kalau kita kaji setiap orang yang cuba menapis filem, mereka adalah orang yang telah bekerja dengan government dan kemudian bersara. Kita tahu mereka punya favor ke arah mana. Memang dia akan kata setengah benda ni hanyalah untuk menjaga keamanan negara, tapi mungkin pengetahuan ni tentang seni tu tak begitu luas dan baik. Sebab tu ada antara filem yang kita rasa filem ni patut ditayangkan di umum tapi tak lepas juga sebab filem tu mungkin terlalu direct.
Okay, just out of curiosity, untuk filem yang Thai tu dan filem Daulat, apakah simbolisme yang digunakan untuk indirect way lah to talk about monarki?
Okay. Kalau filem Daulat dia tak ada indirect way, dia memang direct saja menunjukkan tentang keadaan politik dia ini memang direct. Tapi kalau filem Angka Bumi tu dia tunjukkan macam mana seorang tu watak uncle tu dia ada anak dia di hutan berbulu. Badan penuh bulu, dia ada anak yang ada anak hantu dan makan bersama. So itu kita boleh interpret itulah mungkin raja dan anak-anak raja di sana. Itu sebenarnya boleh dan menariknya tentang benda interpretasi ni, macam mana kita interpret benda, dia boleh jadi betul dan boleh jadi salah. Dia boleh jadi tepat atau tidak tepat, tapi salah, dia bukan boleh jadi salah, dia boleh jadi betul tapi dia boleh jadi tepat ataupun tidak tepat, dan jarang sekali akan jadi salah lah. Sebab itu kita fikir di bawah kita punya pengalaman sendiri. Cuba boleh carilah filem tu, cari filem tu dan cuba bandingkan dengan monarki di Thailand dan kemudian tengok filem-filem pengarah tu yang lain.
Okay, I will check out that film after this. Mus, you agak popular sikit lah. There are 3 questions directed to you.
Mungkin sebab filem kan pop culture, so semua orang boleh relate. Yeah.
That's why we had to have one pop culture person on the panel. But I would also like to remind the audience that you can answer the polls. You can also ask questions to our other panelists as well, Pramesh and Kira, or you can also ask later on during the Q&A session. Now, my final question for Pramesh. Honestly speaking, if I'm trying to think about this from the perspective of the authorities, honestly, how bad can censorship be? I mean, if we look at it from their perspective, they're trying to prevent certain influential figures in this context. There'll be journalists, activists, and artists because they do have some influence. They're trying to prevent these influential figures from saying anything incendiary or possibly provoking sensitivities. Are they trying to keep the people safe, keep the peace? And is provoking necessarily a bad thing? What is your perspective as a journalist on why censorship can be harmful, not just to your work, but to Malaysian society as a whole?
Well, in reality, the government does not censor uniformly. Certain spaces are a lot much more, opportunities, certain are not. For example, in the case of content of court, there were some comments on Malaysia Kini which which were offensive to the courts. However, recently in the Najib trial, there were also people who have made comments online that questioned why the judges neutrality, and you can see that those were actually not taken to task as aggressively as they have done with Malaysia Kini. If you go back and see what you see in the mainstream media, there have often been very incidentary comments in mainstream media. You remember the utusan headline, "Apa lagi China mau?" Back in the elections. I think it was 2008 or 2013. So there are always a lot of provocative comments. Often the politicians are the ones making the most provocative comments and racially inclined. So censorship is not about keeping the peace. The censorship is about neutralizing political power and influence of a certain group of people, which the authorities do not see or see as challenging the government of the day or institutions of the day, such as police, etc. So it's really not about keeping the peace. If you want to develop a healthy society which respects each other, that's in the culture, that's in the way we are educated, the way that we are brought up, our religious values. It is a cultural trait not to offend and attack, and to accommodate each other, and to be tolerant, and to be compromising. Look, for example, how we are now. There seems to be an all-out attack against refugees and migrant workers. Without any understanding of why the workers become undocumented, don't have legal standing in the country. It's very racist. It's a huge amount. The call for violence against this. And the whole discourse about what migrant workers have contributed to the country is lost. Look at all our highways, all our trains, all our buildings. They're practically all built by migrant workers. So I think that we need to understand censorship for what it is, and that it is not a solution to the problem at hand. It's like a country like America justifying nuclear weapons, saying, oh, we need nuclear weapons. Actually, it's not true. It's all about power. It's all about authority. It's all about hegemony and internal colonization of a space for expression. And this is what we need to contest, and we need to, challenge, and to say that there's a better way that we can all live with each other, and respect each other without having to introduce censorship into the equation.
I agree. It's interesting, internal hegemony. And Kira, also my final question to you, since your work has to make use of a lot of new media, I was curious about how, we know that social media, online forums, webinars, content creation on YouTube and TikTok are getting bigger and more influential. And how is this new part of internet and the new media important in shaping and defining your work?
I think new media has made information, giving and receiving information a lot more accessible. You have my students who are able to talk to me about economic affairs, talking to me about national issues, just because they saw a TikTok video. They saw AOC going on Instagram talking about the US Congress. They see these kind of videos of by YB Syed Saddiq talking about the FINAS issue, right? He made a really funny video recently on TikTok about how if his cat were to do a TikTok video, he would need a license from FINAS. So that, a lot of my students who had no idea about the issue of FINAS was like, what is this about? And then they saw the video of the YB Saifuddin talking about it in Parliament. So new media has made it so much more, has made the world so much more accessible, has made, interestingly, issues like political education a lot more accessible to many, many people as well. And I think for a young person, it also opens a lot more doors when it comes to the pushback that you might receive by putting yourself on social media, because then when you interact with a piece of social media like tweets or Facebook posts, you're also putting your own profile, your own picture up there, and that leaves you vulnerable as well, especially if you don't know how to deal with the consequences. Even from my own personal experience, right? So I think this, if we don't start talking about the consequences of being extremely public online to young people, especially to teenagers who, you can't stop them from going on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube anymore. So if you can't stop them, then what do we have to do to making sure that they are prepared, or they are protected online? I think that's the question that we need to ask as well when it comes to in regards to the issue of censorship and all this kind of things. So I mean, as one organization, we can try our best to raise awareness about online safety and things like that. But I think online safety is not just about cyberbullying anymore, but it's also about when you put your opinions out in public, will institutions take note of it? Will authorities pay special attention to you? I think these are consequences that young people don't really know about. Yeah.
Since we're on the topic of hypervisibility and new media, I want to, this is going to be a bit of a segue, but I want to talk a bit also about cancel culture, which is kind of a new thing right now. And especially when a lot of younger people, younger millennials or Zoomers, if they call themselves that, are creating content now on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. And they so much as say the wrong thing, or they said something maybe racist or sexist months or years ago, and they're now being dragged on the internet for it right now, and they're getting bullied for it right now, bullied off the platform. This is something we also need to have a conversation about, because right now, I think a lot of people's first reaction is, oh my God, you said something racist 6 years ago, cancel him. I don't know, how is that productive? So I wonder if there's a different way we can talk to people and have more productive conversations without just canceling people left and right. And I think that plays somehow into censorship. I wonder too if cancel culture can be equated to censorship, although I am very cognizant of the roots and history of where cancel culture came from as well. It was a very good
So I think in this situation, context matters, right? Like when you're calling out someone, is it someone that you need, like a public figure, someone you should like hold them accountable to? Like, for example, if someone who is just starting out in this space and they air out problematic views, as often many uneducated or people who lack exposure do we, if we immediately take the start attacking them, I think this will deepen the divide even more. I mean, you can look at it in schools, right? Like, for example, one thing that my partner always said, that when he went from a urban school into RMC, which is a boarding school, which is majority Malay, although it's the most diverse boarding school in Malaysia, for many of the students, they have never seen an Indian person, they have never seen a Chinese person, in their whole life until 16 years old. So of course they believe and buy into all the stereotypes that they hear because they've never had the exposure before, right? So I think for these kids, right, do we immediately cancel them and immediately try to ruin their opportunities in life? I think that's it's a different conversation that we talk about, like when you want to do cancel culture with someone who is influential, like a politician or a minister or a celebrity. I think it's a very different context lah. So I think for people with influence and with power, I think you have to hold them to a higher standard. You have to hold them to a higher standard lah, and then making sure that they exercise their influence properly. So I think it's okay to call them out if it's something that they've done repeatedly and after feedback they don't change. Then I think that's something that's worth having a discussion about.
Okay, fair point. And Moose, final question for you before we open it up to the floor, and I saved the best question for last also, or best question in my opinion. How is sex portrayed or discussed in Malaysian film? Apakah yang mempengaruhi arah wacana tersebut? Thinking of Ombak Rindu here and other problematic depictions of sex in Malaysian film.
Okay, ini agak menarik sebab filem seni dengan seks memang tak dapat dipisahkan daripada zaman lukisan, zaman fotografi sampailah zaman filem. Jadi sebagai rakyat Malaysia yang ada batas-batas, kita panggil ada batas-batas agama, budaya, seks selalu dilindungkan dalam filem melalui pelbagai cara. Dan antara yang sangat popular adalah dengan menggunakan joke double meaning. So kita ada banyak filem yang bercakap tentang seks tapi menggunakan joke yang double meaning. Kita cakap tentang sesuatu tapi kita menggambarkan seks. Itu sangat popular di zaman era-era zaman studio Piramli lagi. Dan juga filem-filem tahun 80-an, filem-filem arahan Z. Roman. Dia tunjuk ada satu couple yang hendak melakukan hubungan seks, kemudian dia baru berapat je, the next shot is ada Malaysia tengah gerudi tanah. The example is nak tunjuk yang benda tu menggambarkan seks, ataupun ada wanita yang memegang terung misalnya selepas satu adegan nak menunjukkan yang babak tadi ada hubungan seks dilakukan. Jadi berbalik pada soalan Victoria tentang bagaimana ombak rindu ya, penggambaran ombak rindu yang menggambarkan seks sangat problematik. Dan bagaimana juga filem tu boleh dilepas, ditayang di panggung Dan saya juga menjawab sekali lah soalan daripada Matu Balan ya. Matu Balan ada cakap kenapa Ombak Rindu boleh main di sinema tapi bukan movie macam Daulat. Pertamanya adalah filem Ombak Rindu menggambarkan bagaimana seorang watak utama merogoh seorang wanita, melakukan seks dengan tak rela dengan seorang wanita, kemudian mengawini wanita tu, mengawini perempuan tu, dan kemudian ditayangkan di panggung. Jadi kita lihat benda ni daripada status quo, daripada pihak kerajaan, benda tu tidak mencabar mana-mana status quo. Benda tu hanyalah menunjukkan perilaku sesetengah, mungkin kita panggil, kita boleh cakap itu adalah gambaran sebenar sesetengah kaum di Malaysia. Mungkin kita cakap benda tu banyak berlaku di kalangan orang Melayu. Jadi benda tu dipaparkan, tak ada masalah, dan benda tu dari satu pihak melihat benda tu sangat problematik, dari satu pihak lagi melihat benda tu adalah pemaparan dunia sebenar. Dan bagi pihak yang menapis filem pula melihat benda tu adalah satu, tidak memaparkan benda sebenar, dan kedua, tidak melanggar status quo. Itu yang paling penting, sebab saya rasa antara filem-filem yang dilarang tayang di Malaysia atau disensor, yang pertama sekali adalah tidak mencabar mana-mana pihak politik yang memerintah Malaysia. Itu pertama. Kedua barulah seks, tentang agama, tentang sebagainya. Yang pertama sekali adalah tentang politik lah yang paling penting. Ini sejak zaman UMNO memerintah lagi, bukan zaman baru. Ya. Boleh silakan.
Ramesh?
Ya, terima kasih Mus. Memang saya setuju dengan pihak Mus tentang film-film ni. Dan saya ingin bercakapkan daripada pihak Malaysia kini, kita ingin mungkin akan challenge Finas Act dalam mahkamah, sebab kalau kita fikir undang-undang itu tidak mematuhi perlembagaan kita yang dalam artikel 10 memang memberi freedom of expression, kebebasan bersuara, dan termasuk kebebasan media dan kebebasan untuk memberi unsur. Film itu memang daripada dulu lah, dan diceritakan untuk film yang memang ditayangkan di sinema. Tapi masa sekarang banyak film-film yang kita boleh tonton, dokumentari kita boleh tonton via internet. Untuk fikiran saya, kalau kita nak perubahan dalam minda jangka panjang, kita tidak boleh hanya membaca ulasan berita saja yang membentukkan pindahan corak minda tu. Memang film, dokumentari, soap opera, sitcom tu akan membiasakan create new norms dalam society. Misalnya di US, film-film yang ada kononnya ada homoseksual ke apa kan, gay tu akan menjadikan perkara yang norm. Kalau kita letak Netflix sekarang ni, banyak cerita Netflix tu ada suasana yang memang coraknya begitu liberal lah. Jadi untuk saya di Malaysia ni, kalau kita nak mengatasi batasan perkauman misalnya, ataupun soal korupsi dan kleptokrasi dalam kuasa-kuasa tu, itu tu bolehlah kita headline tu korupsi apa, tapi apakah sebenarnya berlaku dalam society kita, masyarakat kita tu, memang film tu yang jadi satu message yang powerful yang boleh membawa perubahan jangka panjang. Jadi kita perlu menjadikan industri film dan dokumentari itu memang a bit more open, a bit more liberal untuk membentuk idea-idea yang baru.
Thank you, Mus and Premesh, for answering the question. Matubalan, do you feel that the question has been satisfactorily answered? If not, you can comment or ask again later on. But I'm going to mark this as resolved. And our next popular question is also by Matubalan. I think also directed at Mus. If there's a classification of censorship according to age, why are there movies being censored even for movies above rated 18?
Ya, bagi saya itu pun memang satu masalah yang pada awal tadi saya terangkan. Kalau kita dah sensor filem tu, kita tak perlu lagi ada klasifikasi. Ataupun kalau kita dah klasifikasi, kita tak perlu lagi sensor. Kena pilih antara satu lah. Ini dua orang nak buat. Itu yang menjadi masalah antara masalah besar jugalah.
But Mus memang tak tahu kenapa lah dia buat macam ni.
Sebenarnya saya tak tahu. Mungkin pada pendapat saya pada awalnya klasifikasi ini dilakukan untuk filem-filem di panggung. Kemudian keluarnya televisyen. Bila televisyen pula dia kena memilih pula macam mana kita nak sensor mengikut ukuran umur yang tertentu pula.
Okay, faham? Okay, so this is resolved as well. Thank you, Matubalan, for the question. And our next question is by Jeanette for Pramesh. Has it been harder to get interviewees to speak on the record in these times, especially after the whole Al Jazeera thing?
Yeah, I mentioned in my reply, I posted a comment there quickly. I think that people, it's actually very difficult to get anybody to speak on the record. A lot of people in power and authority with insider information will not go on record. They fear their position. They fear their, position of their families. There's a lot of fear. The more privileged you are, the more powerful you are. Often it's like the more you have to lose. So you often, you have these kind of questions. So yes, it's very difficult. We have a Whistleblower Act which provides some amount of protection to those who blow the whistle, but still, very, very few people would come forward. So what can we do to strengthen it is to, again, develop the culture to see more people coming up front. For example, in the Me Too movement in the US, a lot of women came forward with the stories of harassment, and that then opened the doors for others to come forward and to talk about that sort of harassment. Now with Black Lives Matters, it becomes the norm to challenge racist attitudes and racial structures in society. So what can we do collectively, all of us together, to make it the norm for us to come forward and speak up and to challenge and to put the spotlight on atrocities that we see, things that are going wrong. It is a challenge, and it's a cultural shift, mindset shift that we need, that needs to happen. In the case of Al Jazeera, I think the more and more of us who speak up, and challenges. For example, Malaysia Kini, if you take up, against the Finance Act. The day we saw this awful video about a Nepalese security guard getting beaten. I think all of you would have seen that video. I always wanted to say, say sorry and say, look, it's a shame for the nation to see such a thing happen in our country. So how do we do it? So we need to kind of create metaphors and opportunities and spaces for people to speak out against atrocities they see, but also to start to identify with the vision of a country that we want to see. What's a country has to be built around a common vision, a common hope, a common direction, and young people and all of us have to come together to articulate that this is the vision that we want, and we are prepared to take a stand and speak up against actions that violate or go against that vision and the idea of the Malaysia we want. So we need to ask ourselves, apakah negara ini, apakah negara Malaysia yang kita nak bentuk, dan bagaimana kita semua rakyat Malaysia membentuk negara kita. Kita tidak boleh tunggu untuk politician ataupun political party untuk membentuk negara kita. Kita Malaysia, kita sendiri hendak membentuk tu. Jadi kalau kita boleh ubahkan begitu, dan kita boleh memberi, give courage to people to come up and speak up and to champion that vision.
Thank you, Pramesh. Yeah, I do agree that it has always been a thing, but I think with the Al Jazeera thing being blown out, migrants are a lot more afraid, more than ever. Next question is also for Mus. Bagaimana tahap permintaan dari stesen TV swasta untuk kandungan yang berunsur politik atau kritikan sosial? And second question, apa yang diperlukan oleh pembikin filem untuk menghasilkan karya politik ataupun sosial yang baik?
Okey, untuk soalan pertama, bagaimana tahap permintaan dari stesen TV swasta untuk kandungan yang berunsur politik atau kritikan sosial? Pertamanya, dari TV swasta yang ada di Malaysia adalah daripada media prima. Media prima tu adalah TV3, NTV7, TV9, dan antara satu company adalah Astro. Astro ada pelbagai channel ada bawah Astro. Astro Citra, Astro Prima, a few things. Untuk kandungan yang berunsur politika dan kritikan sosial, sepanjang saya berkecimpung dalam bidang ni semenjak tahun 2007, mereka tidak begitu bukan tak begitu suka, tak menggalakkan sangat untuk pembikin menghasilkan filem-filem yang ada konten-konten sedemikian. Sebab bagi mereka diorang sendiri ada masalah untuk licensing. Sebab kita kena ingat, kita kena tahu yang setiap stesen TV dia ada satu license daripada Kementerian Dalam Negeri. satu komplain saja sudah cukup untuk lesen mereka ditarik balik. Jadi banyak stesen TV mengelak untuk menghasilkan konten-konten yang sedemikian lah. Pertama. Soalan kedua, apakah diperlukan untuk pembikin filem yang menghasilkan karya politik sosial yang baik? Okey, benda ni saya rasa ini jelas kepada pembikin tu, pekarya tu sendirilah. Untuk menghasilkan filem karya politik sosial yang baik, dia haruslah menjadi seorang pembaca yang baik, pemerhati yang tegar. Nah, dia kena selalu membaca macam mana nak menghasilkan politik dan bagaimana untuk membaca situasi politik tempatan. Tapi pembikin ni perlu ingat sebab karya-karya begini memang suka mendapat tempat di medium-medium arus perdana lah. Jual filem politik di RTM tak lepas, jual di media prima diorang takkan beli, jual di Astro diorang takkan nak. Tapi sentiasa ada alternatif yang lain. Jadi jangan risau, jangan fokus kepada media arus perdana saja. Kita ada banyak cara lain untuk mendapatkan kembali
Okay, the next few questions the next question is about this, but I'm going to lump a few questions together just so we can save time and give more time to the other panelists. But I have one via private message from a friend who asks, why is our censorship board so inconsistent? And then dia bagi contoh. Visual cues macam filem KL Gangster 2, dia ada satu rape scene. Memang proper rape scene where Rosham Noor will pull out Aaron Aziz punya sisters punya underwear and have a body movement that is suggestive of him thrusting into her. How is that not censored? So dia rasa macam censorship board macam pilih kasih lah. And then the other question is from Akil Kamaluddin. He asked what needs to be done for the censorship board in Malaysia to be reworked. And the other similar question is, there's no name here, but it asks, has the guidelines by KDN for censorship and movie classification been updated recently, or has this never been looked at? So they're all in the same theme. It's about the censorship board, but they're asking different things. Has it been updated? Or dia tak kisah when or how is it going to be reworked, and kenapa censorship board inconsistent?
Okey, baik. Saya jawab, adakah dia telah diupdate? Sebenarnya sepanjang sejarah penapisan filem sejak tahun 1900, mereka hanya update sebanyak, saya tak silap saya, sebanyak 3 kali je. Dan yang terbaru adalah pada tahun 2002. So 2002 sekarang dah 2 tahun, dah 18 tahun tak update. So benda tu saya rasa memang agak masalah sebab waktu 2002 tak ada new media lain, tak ada new media lagi. So semua orang hanya menonton di panggung, di televisyen. Sekarang dah ada alternatif, ada Netflix. Sebab tu kita tengok filem ni tak boleh tayang di Malaysia, di panggung Malaysia, tapi ditayang pula di Netflix lepas pula. Sebab saya rasa itu antara akta yang tak diupdate. Dan soalan lain, apa lagi soalannya? Apa yang boleh kita lakukan untuk buat board censorship moderator dan bagaimana, kenapa censorship itu dilihat seperti berat sebelah? Okey, seperti saya katakan tadi, setiap penapisan filem ditonton oleh, tak silap saya, 3 orang daripada ahli lembaga penapisan filem. Dan 3 orang tu setiap sesi adalah orang-orang yang berbeza. Dan setiap orang tu dia punya pemahaman terhadap filem, pemahaman terhadap sesuatu sangat berbeza. Dan benda tu diambil kira daripada latar belakang yang berbeza juga. Sebab tu kita lihat ada filem yang yang ni lepas, yang ni tak lepas, kenapa? Itu pada saya adalah kurangnya keberkesanan ataupun kurangnya efisiensi di kalangan ahli lembaga tu sendirilah. Dan untuk stesen TV pula, dia ada satu board of LPF yang berlainan, yang memang dia bekerja duduk di stesen TV saja dan mereka hanya jaga untuk konten TV itu saja. Itu pula dah lain pula dia punya cara censorship. So memang dilihat nampak memang, kalau boleh kata, nampak tak adil lah. Tak adil, berat sebelah ataupun tidak efisien. Puncaknya adalah daripada orang-orang yang berlainan. Dia tak ada satu benda semua orang yang tengok sama. Sebab saya ada ingat satu filem Singapura tak lepas tayang di Malaysia. Filem tu tentang bagaimana seorang lelaki telah melakukan keganasan seksual terhadap lelaki yang lain. yang mangsa adalah lelaki Cina, pemangsa adalah lelaki Melayu. Benda tu tidak boleh ditanyakan di Malaysia hanyalah sebab itu. Sebab nak menunjukkan yang bahawa yang pemangsa tu adalah Melayu. Nak tunjuk Melayu ni teruk. Itu hujah dia semudah itu. Itu yang sangat aneh lah. Dan untuk seperti Pemi cakap, memang kita perlu mendesak pihak kerajaan, mendesak pihak KDN untuk melihat semula akta penapisan filem ni, mendesak apa yang harus patut dilakukan lah untuk membuatkan censorship ni lebih adil.
Okay. All right. The next question, I feel Kira can answer this. What are your thoughts on the notion of keeping sensitivities in Malaysia? It's quite interesting how prominent this notion is cited in Malaysia in governing media content, almost non-existent in other countries. Is keeping sensitivities a genuine concern for media practitioners to respectfully be wary of, or has it been mainly used as a pretense for censorship?
I think it's more on the latter. I mean, I wouldn't claim myself to be a media practitioner, right? But speaking from someone who works in civil society, I think we're very, as a society, we're very accustomed to not having the difficult conversations. So I hope that, media outlets and people in the creative arts, people who are trying to push for this, do not give up on trying to facilitate the difficult conversations, because or else it's going to be very hard for us as a society to progress. I work with kids and teenagers a lot. Already they are shying away from their own opinions. Already they are holding themselves back. And I don't think this is an indicator of a healthy developing country. And if these kids are having all this access and resources in front of them, and yet they are not willing to step up to have the difficult conversations, we are going to be very far behind compared to developing teenagers compared to around the world. When I was in university, you can look at the difference between university environments between public universities, private universities, and then comparing them to universities abroad. The level of discourse, the level of access to these conversations and these ideas are very, very different. And and as Malaysians and as someone who has pushed for lowering the voting age, is quite concerning if we're not ready to have this kind of discussions. If we're going to look at empowering 7.8 million new voters in the next general election, I think it's a bigger problem than we think it is, lah. Yeah.
Definitely, I think so too. Thank you for that question, and thank you, Kira, for answering this. And the next question will be for Premish. By the way, Kira, I do think you're a media practitioner, even though you might not think you are, because you do employ new media and tools on media to do your outreach and engagement. So in a way, yeah.
I guess the definition is sort of fluid, right? Depending who you like how it applies to. But
because you would also be in danger of censorship or surveillance too.
True.
Because you work on it. This next question is for Pramesh. How's the freedom of media expression in Malaysia kini during the BN era, the PH era, and the PN era?
I think that definitely, during Pakar Harapan was in government, there was less hostility against questions by the media. I think they were more open. There's a lot of reports that we did that they were, maybe not so happy with, and because we also questioned them a lot, about liners and about much of the backtracking they did against their manifesto. I think the PH government's failure was actually not being able to deliver on many of the promises in the manifesto, but they did, create a more liberal environment. They were much more open and they were much more responsive to the media and trying to engage the media and tell their side of the story. I think since the new Pakistan national government has come in, you can see a lot more people being called up for police for questioning in and other cases. So I think there is a little bit more feeling of being closed. It's still early days. We want to encourage the government to rethink how they look at the media. The government cannot look at the media as something they need to control. The government needs to look at the media as a medium that needs to be respected and have credibility. Then people will then be able to engage the media. When you control the media and the media starts almost writing to what pleases the government, then you actually give birth by curbing the space of media. You actually allow the space for fake news, for misinformation, for disinformation to grow, because people lose confidence in the media. They don't believe what the media is saying. So for example, a simple thing like, let's think the number of COVID cases a day. The government is giving one number, but if you have a robust media, the media will be questioning it, asking in such a way that, and the government can withstand that questioning, then people will then believe, yes, these numbers are accurate. But if you clamp down the media and you have a complacent and a compliant media, people will say, well, maybe the media is not really asking the tough questions, maybe the numbers are not accurate, etc. So you need to have the appearance that the media is free and independent, and the government is willing to respond to questions from the media. Building that credibility of media is really, really important when you actually want to reach out to the larger population. I'm also the chairperson of the Pro-Tem Committee for the Malaysian Media Council, and we make a lot of arguments about why a more self-regulated media is very, very important in taking the country forward. So we hope that the government would agree with that and move forward on that proposal.
Thank you, Primish. I agree with you on that as well. I do think that when censorship happens, inadvertently that creates a space for more fake news and misinformation to occur. And we have some love shown to us by Fatima over here, loving all the panelists and moderator. Wish this discussion could be aired on mainstream TV. Thank you so much. Fingers crossed with this can one day be
might get censored.
Mood, you have to help us with this. But Fatima, we will be uploading a full recording of this forum on our YouTube channel, so you can follow us on our social medias over there. You can check out this video that's going to be uploaded in a few days on our YouTube channel. That is something we can guarantee. And now for another question, again by Matubalan. Thank you very much for your enthusiasm. There was a point in time other movies were restricted to promote Malay movies in cinemas. Correct me if I'm wrong. Why is the same not done for other language local movies?
Alright, thank you Matabalan. Saya rasa sekitar sebelum tahun 2000 hanya filem-filem Melayu sahaja yang diwajibkan untuk promote. Kita panggil benda tu adalah syarat wajib tayang. Tapi selepas beberapa tahun kebelakangan ni, semua filem yang dihasilkan di Malaysia diarahkan oleh pengarah Malaysia, tidak kiralah apa bahasa sekalipun, asalkan ia ditutur di Malaysia, boleh memohon untuk syarat wajib tayang. Okey, bagi siapa yang tak jelas tentang syarat wajib tayang adalah satu inisiatif daripada Finas untuk membantu filem lokal ditayang di panggung. Antara syarat-syarat yang terkandung dalam syarat wajib tayang adalah kalau nak tahu, semua filem mula ditayangkan di panggung adalah pada hari Khamis pada setiap minggu. Jadi setiap panggung akan kira Khamis, Jumaat, Sabtu dan Ahad. Kalau 4 hari itu filem tu tak laku, bawah 15% daripada penonton yang datang, filem tu boleh dikeluarkan pada sinema. Dah tak boleh tayang pada minggu hadapan. Jadi di sinilah syarat wajib tayang diperlukan untuk membantu filem-filem ni terus tayang selama seminggu atau 2 minggu. Dan untuk di masa pasca pandemik ni, pihak Finas baru saja minggu lepas mengumumkan semua filem lokal yang ditayangkan di panggung pada sekarang yang telah meminta untuk syarat wajib tayang perlu ditayangkan selama 2 minggu berturut-turut. Maknanya kalau filem tu laku ataupun tak laku, tetap perlu ditayangkan. Jadi untuk kes filem bukan bahasa Melayu yang tidak perlu dipromosi adalah mungkin benda tu sekitar sebelum tahun 2000 lah. Saya ada dengar juga tentang berita tu, tapi sekarang semua filem-filem Malaysia yang bertutur dengan semua bahasa yang ada di Malaysia boleh memohon untuk syarat wajib tayang.
Okay, thank you, Mus. And now, Kira, a question for you. How much are youths who participate in Parliament Digital willing to push back against censorship and restrictions on freedom of expression? And how willing are they to work with the government counterparts to work on media reform? Good question.
Yeah. Hi, Amanda. I don't know. I don't think I can speak on behalf of 200 something participants. What I can share is that, when the situations when police intimidation harassment was happening, I think overall the participants were very supportive of each other. They were giving each other moral support. They were giving each other encouragement, so that the other participants who were contacted were not feeling nervous or too scared to face it. So I think overall they've I guess experienced firsthand on what Malaysian censorship can be about, and how they need to proceed very carefully. I think when we discuss about how willing are young people to put themselves forward in discussion on reforms and things like that, first of all you need to look at youth overall they're not a monolith. We have young people who are from different areas in Malaysia, different sectors of community, different layers of different sections of community, who have to pick and choose their battles. So, for example, we had a few participants who almost pulled out. One of them actually didn't want to give a speech because she's on scholarship. And with the whole police intimidation issue came out, she was like, I don't want to lose my position, my opportunity to gain education, because, she worked really hard to get a scholarship, and her family is from a low-income family, and they cannot risk her scholarship being pulled. So when these forms of intimidations are very prevalent and still very much used to control our Malaysian youth, even though our coup has been amended to supposedly allow politicians to go into schools, young people still has a lot more barriers when it comes to pushing for institutional reforms like media freedom. So I think unless they're in a position where they're able to they're able to have legal recourse, they're able to have social support from family and friends to go through it, I think it may be quite challenging for them to do it lah. But I definitely think within the Parliament Digital group, among the 200 something participants, there are quite a number of them that have interested to push their political activism journey a lot further. Some of them have joined or started their own NGOs, their own movements, championing various issues. And I wouldn't be surprised if media freedom is one of them. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's really heartening to hear.
There's hope.
Yeah, thank you, Kira and Amanda. And now we have another question from Matumadin, but he did tell me that he wanted to direct this question to Kira. Do people with big following automatically have a moral responsibility to send a positive message to all those who follows them? Is it right to call them out if they don't speak about a topic of interest, for example, BLM, Indians dying in prisons, etc.? Because I guess social media influencers do have influence too.
Yeah, I think it highly dependent on your brand, so to say. So for example, I've been looking at how America handled the BLM situation. Even when you look at how social influencers have been starting to call out, under every viral message they put out, they'll be like, oh, by the way, check out these resources, donate to these NGOs and things like that. I think these are really great ways for people to raise attention about certain issues. But then I also see certain influencers or celebrities, social influencers. Yeah, I don't mean like famous activists. I mean social influencers who do like I don't know, clothes and makeup and stuff. Being called out for, why don't you talk about BLM? Why don't you talk about police brutality and things like that? I think it may not be the fairest call out to these individuals, because I think when it comes down to it, activism is your own personal volition. I don't know. I think it's maybe an unpopular opinion, but I don't think it's up to us to impose the responsibility of I guess activism on every single person, right? I mean, people may disagree with me on this, but I think your influence is up to you to, I guess, determine how you want to use it. And if it's, unless it reaches a negative impact. So, for example, someone who's encouraging, I don't know, like suicide or hate speech. I think that's a different conversation altogether. But can you call someone for not? It's not something that they are known for. It's a bit fair, because you want to make sure that because you don't know everything about them as well. Maybe discussing these issues will bring harmful consequences to them personally. So I don't think it's a fair expectation to put on individuals just because they are open to share their opinions in public. It doesn't mean that they have to comment on every single issue as well. Yeah, I think we often see this, especially on young women who are vocal online. I've seen influencers who speak up. I mean, who talk about lifestyle material content, and then they'll be like, oh, takkan you every talk about tudung, you talk about like issues lah. And then it's
it's like, and then as a young woman, you'd be like, why me? Why is that my responsibility? I think that's, I don't think that's fair.
I am totally in agreement with Kira here. I get where the criticisms are coming from. People are saying you have a big platform, you have a following, you should use that platform and following to spread some good message. But like Kira said, I think activism should be your own volition as well. Otherwise, you're just going to be you listen to talking heads everywhere telling you what your cause should be. And this ends up resulting in cases like, when Tom Holland was criticized for not commenting about BLM. But oftentimes, in fact, even a lot of, I think the BLM activists were also saying, we actually prefer people to just sit back and listen rather than keep speaking for us and commenting for us. So a lot of white influencers felt the pressure to comment about BLM to show that they're woke. Everyone wants to jump on this bandwagon of fake woke culture, like, look at how woke I am. There's no need for virtue signaling in the world of YouTube, where it should really be about making videos that entertain people. Ultimately, that's why YouTube existed in the first place. But it has started becoming a vehicle for, I guess, identity politics, so to speak. So I totally agree with Kira on this. I definitely agree with you. And thank you so much for that question too. That was a very good question. We have some more. This is to Pramesh from Wan Nurul Hanani. Is there a strong correlation between censorship in media organization and their shareholders? In other words, how much media buyers / owners influence editorial choices to report things that are deemed not favorable or might jeopardize the reputation of the media owners?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we need to understand media business models, right? So there are various types of business models. There are some media where the business model is actually good journalism. So they actually want people who appreciate good journalism to read them, and they want advertisers who appreciate good journalism to read them. They may have a subscription model, or they may go for advertisers who appreciate a more liberal, independent media environment, etc. So that's a model built around good journalism. Unfortunately, that is rarely the case. There are only very, very few media business models based on that. Most likely the case, in many cases, it is about the media owner wanting to project themselves or have influence and authority in the public sphere. So the media is often a kind of a loss maker or an influence maker. So they may have another business in property or in some other area in manufacturing or in pharmaceuticals, and the media is a way for them to buy influence within the establishment. Or some media are owned by political influences, and they want to then further their political careers or further the interests of a particular political party. The other media aligned to religious groups or a particular ethnic group, and then that media then tries to be open about it. So it's very often there's a case where certain media is in a way captured by a particular interest group, and then there's a symbiotic interest between that media and that interest group. For example, Malaysia Kini is not to say free of influences. Malaysia Kini grew up in the era of reformasi, about political change, about democratization, right? So in a way, our leadership is aligned to that sort of thinking about more political freedom, more transparency, more accountability. So for us, for example, to move away from that and start, for example, pirating a government would not be in our DNA. Our readers would reject, that sort of perspective. So it is not so much a question of there can be outright censorship and control by the media owner, or a certain bias developed because of a symbiotic relationship between the media and its readership and its group of sponsors who support that media. So in one case, it's very explicit and identifiable. Another case is a little bit more subtle, which goes on. But generally, there are very few media committed to independent journalism. Malaysia Kini obviously is committed to reporting accurately, fairly, and independently of any political interest. But that also creates a lot of financial constraints. So we have a lot of financial constraints in the media. So it's that's a trade-off that we are willing to accept.
Thank you so much. We have one question from Vigneswaran. Hi, Vikar. asking, where do we draw the line in comedy? Are there any topics one shouldn't joke about? I guess I can direct this to all of you. I think all of you can actually answer this question. We can start with Moose, maybe?
I think Moose is muted.
Moose, you.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know how to answer this. Maybe depends on who's your audience is. For me, only that lah. Because in the first place, I agree to say that tak ada censorship adalah lebih bagus. Bila saya kata kita harus komedi harus ni, so saya tak langsung saya telah menyokong perlunya ada censorship. So saya rasa itu terpulang kepada siapa stand up comedian tu ataupun siapa pekarya tu lah. Saya tak ada masalah.
Okay. And Kira, what are your thoughts?
I think for me, the question is always like, who are you making fun of, or what are you making fun of? Like, you know, I think I've attended certain comedy shows in Malaysia where, you know, sometimes it makes fun of marginalized communities, or, you know, women, or you know, I think people are getting more and more not sensitive, but I think people are having better conversations nowadays, and you start to realize that, you know, in comedy, or, you know, especially satire, these are all a form of media, a form of entertainment. What are you really getting entertained by? Is it by the sufferings, or is it by the unfortunate situations of others? And when that happens, what are you really laughing at? So I think people are having this awareness a lot more. So I think I'm guessing that's where the question is coming from, right? Like, you know, should comedians censor themselves? You know, do you not make fun of things because people are like snowflakes and things like that? I think it's not about being sensitive, but I think being aware of, again, like what Moose mentioned, your audience and the context that you are doing the comedy in. You know, can comedy be harmful? I think it can. You know, I went to a comedy show before where someone was talking about I think an issue of sexual assault, and I'm just thinking in my mind, like, what if there are sexual assault survivors in the audience who would be, you know, would be reminded of the experiences and things like that. And then I think, you know, it's like a slippery slope, right? What else does it subtly say about our society as a whole if we can take issues like this and make fun of it, and not in a productive manner? I think yeah.
Thank you, Kira, for your thoughts. And Pramesh, you can also share.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we have to take it at two levels. I totally agree with Kira and Moose that, you know, first of all, we have to be sensitive to our audience, right? So, you know, we need to know who we are speaking about, and you know, it's one thing for, you know, a black person to make fun about their own black community. It's another person for, you know, a white person to make fun of black community. You know, if I were to make fun about migrant workers getting beaten up, you know, that would be terrible. But if a Nepalese guy comes here and say, yeah, you know, we Nepalese, we come to Malaysia and get beaten up, you know, it's got a different context, right? He's reflecting on why does it, you know, in spite of being beaten up, why the hell do we come to Malaysia? You know, it's a different question. And I think the comedy in a way has to, in a way, challenge the mainstream, challenge what is the norm, right? And invokes new thinking. And it's also very interesting in comedy in terms of where do we draw the line. That means to know our no-go areas also say something about what society accepts and doesn't accept. So today we know we can make fun of, you know, lesbians and gays or whatever, but we want to go to incest, want to go to other kind of, you know, peculiar areas, people are like, oh no, that's you know, that's not something we should go into, right? So to actually understand, and historically the boundaries of comedies and satire has evolved. You know, at one stage you could not make satire against the Catholic Church or royalty, and today you can, you know. So, you know, it's actually an indicator about
Depending which royalty, though.
Yeah, what society accepts as something that can be challenged and provoked and discussed, and what society says no, it's, you know, it's not, it's still not, it's kind of off limits. But end of the day, I think it's a bit of a go between. It's about audience knowing, I mean, the comedian knowing the audience, but it's also about the audience saying, hey, if I want to go for a comedy show, you know, there could be a few things which, you know, I might be unhappy about, right? But you know what, we need to say, hey, I'm willing to go and, you know, watch a show on TV or on a comedy. And we need to give people a break, right? Not everything is going to be perfect. Comedians are going to make mistakes as well. So I think that interaction between the comedian and the audience has to be understood in that context.
Thank you for very, very insightful comments about it. If I can jump in as well, I personally feel that comedy and art in general should not be censored. I think comedy should be enjoyed by everyone, but I do think it really depends on your audience. There will be a huge difference of you joking about women amongst your friends, your close friends and family, and joking about women in public, for example. Very different context. And also the connection that certain people feel with comedians, because comedians also have their own followings, their own fan base. So when they feel that connection, even sexual assault survivors might say, hey, I thought his joke about sexual assault was okay. But that's probably because she's a very loyal fan. It's very different from if you were just to like blab it out publicly as well. These things I think that to be taken into consideration. But I sometimes also think that comedy is funnier when a Chinese person talks about Chinese racism, for example, rather than a white person talks about Chinese racism. Not because they shouldn't and it's not their narrative to claim or whatever, but they can't quite hit it on the nail. There will always be factual inaccuracies that a Chinese person might be able to better embody. So sometimes I do think like comedians should be smart also with the material that they choose to keep it fresh and to keep it smart. Don't just talk about anything under the sun because you think it's going to provoke people or get people to laugh. It has to have an intelligent thought process go into it as well. So that's just my comment on it. And do we have any more questions? No, we do not. So I did want to end the forum in 1.5 hours because I think 2 hours would be too much of a drag. So without, if there are no more questions for the audience, I would come to the closing. And again, I would like to remind everyone that you can check out Project Dialogue social media in the chat, and this recording of the forum will be on our YouTube channel. So look out for that. And Kira, Pramesh, and Moose, do you have any of your own work or social media you want to promote here? Let me know. I can also let the audience put it out here on the screen. Okay. And do you want to put out some of your promotion as well?
Yeah, I want to promote my second film will be released in cinema on 27 August. The title is Takut ke Tak. It's a horror comedy movie about a bunch of student film who want to make non-cliche horror films. That's my second film. And my first film will release next year. It's about what happened to orang muda di Kuala Lumpur with the current political situations. So can follow my IG to any news. And thank you for this session.
Yeah, Moose, do you want to put your IG over here for everyone to follow?
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, and Pramesh, guys, do go to Malaysia Kini's website as well. They write really, really good articles. This is like good journalism at its peak. Please do follow Malaysia Kini as well. And Kira's own organization is Undi 18. UNDI18, Undi 18, and they do a lot of good work empowering the youth to be involved in policy making and to be educated on the political processes of Malaysia. So Kira and Primish can also put out your links there for everyone to follow. Their work is very important, so do watch out for their work as well. And final plug for Project Dialogue, we are also working with Muzame on a film festival that's coming.
Yes, this September.
Yes, September. It's going to be Pesta Film Kita #3. And we're going to try and bring to you 7 great films by young filmmakers.
Yes.
Nice, that's awesome.
No,
I think for Undi 18, just a quick one. We just recently launched Undi Sabah because of all the political developments in Sabah. So we are hoping to work with a group of young Sabahans. We already have a team of young Sabahans working together to produce voter education, information infographics, especially in BM and in Bahasa Kadazan and Bahasa Dusun, so that young Sabahans can also get educated on issues like this. So it's the first time that we are sort of going into the Borneo area, although I grew up in Sarawak, but it's the first time that we are doing proper outreach into Sabah and Sarawak, so we're very excited about that as well. So we're on Undi Sabah and Undi Sarawak on all platforms, so do check us out on that as well. Yeah.
Yes. And Premish, do you have a plug as well?
Yeah, Malaysia
No,
Kini.
I think I think we all go out there, have a bit of fun, do interesting stuff. I really think that younger people should take the lead. We should give more space to younger people. Listen to all of y'all, and I think there's a lot of change ahead of us. Difficult stuff, but we need to build our bridges and really work towards that change. So let's all go out and do it.
Great. Thank you so much. First to the panelists
Thank you.
for just being amazing, for being so educational and informative, and for being so cool and patient with everything and learning how to do this crowdcasting. Thank you also to the audience for staying through to the very end, for registering. You saw my security question there. Thank you to all of you. You've made this forum possible. And Mark Zuckerberg, if you're spying on us right now, we're coming for you next. Remember, we do not support censorship, and go freedom of expression. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.